I wrote a book and now I'm going to shamelessly plug it. So this is The Flying Woman, written by me, Daniel Sherrier. And what is it all about? Well, let's start a little broader. Superhero secret identities are not an outdated concept. While it's not the right fit for all stories within the genre, there is a lot of potential within that concept of juggling two different personas and making that work. Even in the 80 years since Superman debuted, the possibilities have not been exhausted, especially not in the novel medium. So here's the idea at the core of The Flying Woman. How do you act like a perfect person when you know full well you're not anywhere near perfect? The main character, Miranda Thomas, knows she's not perfect, but now she has an opportunity to become an inspiring figure with a reach and appeal far beyond her greatest ambitions. She's been granted power, unasked and unearned. So how does she live up to that? And how does she confront her fear of failure? So here's an excerpt from the book as Miranda discovers her power of flight for the first time. Miranda felt her throat closing and gasped for air. Nobody rushed to check on her. Would anyone notice if she passed out? She didn't, though. All that surplus energy boiled inside without anywhere to go, her tightening chest bottling it up. If she could just breathe. Miranda sucked in a lungful, and the ground disappeared, and her hair whipped into her face. All sense of weight abandoned her, as if gravity decided to untether just this one person. Everything was spinning. No, she was spinning. Spinning where? By what means? She felt nothing except her own clothes and the relentless wind that kept changing its mind about which way it wanted to blow. A commotion rang out among the park-goers, their volume swiftly diminishing to nothing. Miranda reached out to grab whatever she could, but empty air offered no support. She found herself outside the Mount Olympus observation deck, looking straight in. She almost expected to see herself in there. Instead, several stunned faces turned toward her, only just beginning to register the sight of a flying woman. And Miranda realized that she, somehow, was a flying woman. But she had no idea how to fly, so she swirled, tumbling head over feet along an ever-changing axis. Whether the ground was above, below, or to a side, it remained far away, easily hundreds of feet removed from her. The scenery shifted with every revolution. Blurs of people became blurs of cars, which morphed into blurs of skyscraper windows, and the windows zoomed toward her. Miranda shouted and covered her face, and the wind shifted, sweeping her away as the world spun. She had flown several blocks from the park to a street full of sleek, towering office buildings with full-length windows. Her aerial somersaults interrupted many workers' daily routines, and a few close brushes spiked some heart rates. But no one got a good look at her. She was a human rocket with a broken guidance system, swerving toward and away from buildings in search of a destination. At the street's terminus, an especially wide office building offered itself up as a target. It seemed to charge toward her. She thought, wished, and prayed to move in a different direction. Any would do. Right as she flinched, no collision happened. Instead, she saw a street packed with cars and people, and it all retreated from her as she rose straight up. A series of windows flashed beside her until the supply ran out, and rooftops came into view, as did more streets. The streets grew longer and narrower as the rooftops shrank and the wind bore down harder on her back. Mount Olympus re-entered her field of vision, the whole thing, the highest point in Olympus City, and she was looking down on it. Felt like she was looking up, though. The whole world was upside down. She wasn't slowing. Some weird force yanked her ever higher. But what force? The air thinned, so thin and cold now, and her view resembled a topographical map. People and vehicles were imperceptible, and soon even Mount Olympus would share their fate. No plane, no parachute, no safety net of any kind, and yet she needed to return to that receding ground. Finally, her ascent slowed, and a familiar knot tightened in her stomach, like she was reaching the top of a roller coaster, about to ride that first steep drop, but she had no tracks to guide her. She came to a full stop and hung above the clouds, a howling wind drying her skin. Staring down miles of empty air, she clutched her shivering arms and had barely a second to reflect on the fact that however this ended, her life would forever be different. And she fell. Frigid air smacked her in the face, attempting to suffocate her, and she tumbled, losing all sense of direction. At least the screaming helped clear her lungs. The fall kept going. She expected it to be over already, but the ground, wherever it was right this second, taunted her. At any time it could crush her, and she'd die as no one and nothing. But it kept her waiting. Occasionally she'd catch a glimpse of a distant landscape, always a little closer but never arriving. Wasn't there a certain pose she was supposed to strike? She recalled skydivers holding their arms and legs up above their flat torsos, so she did that, and the tumbling soon stopped. It didn't solve her lack of a parachute, but now she had a better view of her approaching demise. The ground continued its steady march toward her, but she didn't feel like she was falling anymore. She blinked rapidly against the constant wind rushing up against her, and she otherwise lost all sense of motion. Details emerged on the landscape, clusters of trees with a road cutting through. The vehicles grew, and she panicked. This would be it, with no profound final thought, just how the hell is any of this happening? But the fall remained generous with its time, allowing her another thought. What if she was somehow responsible? What if she could redirect her fall? She pictured herself moving to the right, and the very thought propelled her that way. She hurtled across the sky at more miles per hour than she expected, at least as fast as her recent free-fall. Now she was falling sideways. She took a breath, leveled her body, pointed her fist straight ahead, and she thought forward. No more falling. Now she was flying, sailing above the world under her own power. She laughed, she howled with unbridled glee. Flying. The impossible happened, and of all people, it happened to her. The Flying Woman, now available on Amazon in paperback, ebook coming soon. The links are down below, so please take a look. Thank you for watching. I'll be back later.